Welcome to another edition of Dr. George Belle Speaks, where we examine the latest political developments shaping Barbados. I'm Rashid Best. Thanks for joining us. Today, our renowned political scientist, analyst, and historian shares his insights on the recent shifts and events surrounding the Democratic Labour Party. With his wealth of knowledge and keen understanding of Barbadian politics, Dr. Belle will help us understand the implications of these changes, what they mean for the DLP, and how they may impact the broader political landscape in Barbados.
Well, on this matter of the Democratic Labour Party conference, my way of dealing with it is to look at the political implications that arise from what took place during that conference. And I would say, first of all, that the conference had a successful opening from what was reported. That was the Friday opening. It was the Saturday that a clash between factions took place, and this led to the suspension of activities on the Saturday. That really extended apparently into the night with the occupation of the auditorium, which is a signal for when I develop the points in relation to that, of why the behavior on the Saturday had implications for what action was taken on the Sunday. So you had the actual clash between people during the Saturday, sufficient to cause the suspension, and then you had an occupation which was seen as a challenge to the security of the building and the property of the party. And then on the Sunday, the conference was able to complete itself, even if truncated. So the conference came to a conclusion with the delivery of the speech by the political leader, Mr. Thorne. And his speech was a stabilizing speech. So when we look at the big events in the conference, you could say it had its opening, it had its test in terms of the clash between the factions, and then it had its stabilization in the Sunday. And that is where we can move from there to go into the question of the political implications for the party and for the country and so on and so forth. So I will come back to some of those issues in relation to the three events, essentially the clash and the speech. But what then took place by the time that Thorne was able to give his speech, and where he identified people for what some people are calling a shadow cabinet, but he called a set of spokespersons. You could, by that time, I could use the term that I had originally identified for describing what I felt was going on from the time that Mr. Thorne took up the leadership or applied for membership of the Democratic Labour Party, that it was that whole design, that whole activity and event was what I call the palace coup. In other words, from the very beginning, Mr. Thorne said he was not alone. And that can mean many things to many people, but it also means to somebody like myself that he was not acting alone, that he had people that were in alliance with him. If you want to go to an extreme description, you could say there was a conspiracy, that he was invited by certain people in the party to join them in making a bridgehead to deal with a leadership that had taken over the party and that they felt was a threat to the character of the political organization, of the Democratic Labour Party. So that on that basis, they wanted to carry out the removal of the leader, which is Mr. Ron Yarwood, Dr. Yarwood, remove him because they felt that he had he was alienating the party from itself by his proposals and his intentions in relation to policy that he was determined to carry out as leader of the party. So by the Sunday, with his having been suspended and then expelled, along with his strong supporter, Mr. Blackett, we could say that the palace coup was successful. It doesn't mean that there are not possibilities for challenging that, but it was a successful palace coup because, in that sense, especially when he was excluded from the Sunday activity, locked out, then that meant that the palace coup had succeeded. Now, the reason why I am calling the palace coup is that on a technical, mechanical, political sense level, as because it was not done, deliberately not done, on the basis of obvious democratic practice. And that is where some people are either a bit confused or annoyed by what might have taken place. Others are quite satisfied that they got what they wanted, that was the removal of Dr. Yarwood. Just remember that the conference, the annual conference, even if it is not so now as practiced by the Democratic Labour Party, as or some people want it to be, they're calling for a membership conference for votes. Now, all the membership is not going to turn up. So that is why, in its original conception, the conference would have been a delegates conference in which the delegates represent the constituencies of the party, and on that basis, it could be argued they reflect the party's will. So that to call for membership to turn up and vote, which is partly where the party had, let's say, degenerated to, the preference would have been actually for it to be a delegates conference to settle this issue of who was removing who. And in this case, you could say that there was a group of people broad enough to claim that they were representative of the alternative view in the party. Whether they were the majority is not settled. I have heard arguments that they are the majority. They are what is called by some people the rank and file, and they actually have a social group that they discuss on the line online, in which they talk to each other about their concerns about the party and so on. And at the tip of that group are the people who, in a sense, launched the coup and successfully got Dr. Yarwood expelled. So the alternative is for the Mr. Blackett and Dr. Yarwood to appeal, and apparently that will take a year's doing. In other words, they can't do that until the next conference. And you would have to ask if the next conference will be configured as a delegates conference or just a membership conference. So this is how the issue could be carried on over time. The carrying on the issue and the conflict over that length of time is not going to be good for the Democratic Labour Party, because the Democratic Labour Party should be trying to stabilize itself and prepare itself for the next general election. The longer this conflict goes on and this struggle between people goes on, it's not in the interest of the party. So the question has to be asked to, are the people that are holding out, are they really interested in the party? Because some people might say, why don't they withdraw? And if they want to stay in the party and recover, stay in the party and recover over time, but do not inhibit the party from stabilizing itself and engaging in recovery and preparation for the general election. So that is really what that clash on Saturday played out as in relation to Sunday and to my definition of what would be a palace coup, which is essentially an internal removal of a leadership by people that are close to that leadership. In other words, they used to have a lot of palace coups in the time of the Roman Empire. You could almost say that the assassination of Julius Caesar was a palace coup, And they've been done in other places as well, of course, in more modern times and so on. But it was not done on the basis of an election or anything like that, but it was done on the basis of people that had an interest in the party. If we heard Mr. Stewart's speech, he did say that the party, in a sense, it was heading in a direction where it was alienating itself from itself. Now, the Constitution itself, originally I saw certain playing around with the Constitution by Dr. Yarwood himself. And I remember the issue of whether you should have a parliamentary group or a parliamentary caucus. The parliamentary caucus doesn't exist in the language of the DLP's constitution. The challenging of who would be political leader. The political leadership issue is clear in the constitution of the Democratic Labour Party, where it says that the person able to command a majority in the House, in the elected House, is the leader, is the political leader of the party. And Mr. Thorne being accepted as a member and being the only person in the House of Assembly that could identify with the DLP becomes the political leader on that basis. There's no question about it on the basis of the Constitution, unless you want to change the Constitution. And when you change the Constitution, then you have to ask, may you be tampering with the wisdom of the Constitution? A part of the wisdom of that Constitution is whether people like Mr. Barra and Mr. Cameron Trude and so on wanted that party to have a certain character when they were founding it. The people that found an organization, they usually want that organization to have a particular direction even when they're no longer there. So they try to build into any document or text that they can create the core values that they want, the core intent that they have in relation to where the party should go. Some of that is written into the Democratic Labour Party's constitution. So in a sense, not directly, by extension, what is written into the Democratic Labour Party's constitution is the capacity for people, if the party is threatened in terms of its core character, to be removed from being able to change the character of the party in terms of its core values and its core intent. That is the basis of the Palace coup as well. If you can find that as a part of the wisdom of the Democratic Labour Party, but I know that that's open to debate as to whether that was in the Constitution. But I do not think that the founders of the Democratic Labour Party set up a party to be the party reflecting Dr. Ronnie Yarwood in 2024. I do not believe that it would have been set up to be other than what could be ideologically identified as a social democratic party, even if you have to live with that ideology within the context of a neoliberal reality. That there should be some compromise between the two of those, not a complete subordination to neoliberalism. And I saw that some of that was being revived by the rank and file group within the party, that their party is a social democratic party. So that we have to definitely take these things into account in relation to trying to identify what was the wisdom in the Constitution, and that the Constitution itself, even if not saying it explicitly, guided the persons who said, you are going too far and we need to turn this thing around. And if necessary, we will take the measure of a palace coup. Our intent is to remove the person who is challenging the core values and the core intent of the Democratic Labour Party's founders. Now, we can debate that. But that is certainly one of the ways in which it can be interpreted. The next thing that happened at Mr. Thorne's speech at the Sunday of the conference was that he said there would be Mr. Ryan Walters would be a senator, will continue as a senator, and there will be another senator. And that immediately indicated that he was going to rid himself of Miss Watson as a senator for the Democratic Labour Party. Now, the logic of that is fairly clear. Again, people could get upset. I heard people talking as if it's some kind of business that you're dealing with, that you got to give people notice, as if it's some trade union, industrial relations issue or something. when it's a political issue, it's an issue of power. Mr. Thorne is the leader of the opposition. The senators that are appointed by the leader of the opposition don't even have anything to do with a party. The Constitution of Barbados is the state constitution now. The Constitution of Barbados does not recognize political parties. It recognizes the person who is able to command the majority either for the governing side or for the opposing side. Mr. Thorne represents the person who can command the majority for the opposing side. He's one man, and there's nobody else challenging him. He has, therefore, under the Constitution, the right to appoint 2 senators. Those senators are his people. An issue there is the loyalty of the people. That it must be a critical issue. Are they loyal to the opposition leader? There are a number of indicators that people said casually that Ms. Watson did not demonstrate in her behavior the loyalty to the leader of the opposition. She contradicted him on a number of occasions in terms of her contributions to debate. She did not turn up in support of him at certain functions that he was present. I think that any discerning political leader would see that this is the body language or the actual behavior of somebody that is not favoring him as their number one. Now, if you are not favoring him as your number one and he is the leader of the opposition, then you should be an independent senator. Now, if you are an independent senator, you go to the president and tell the president to get rid of one of the independent senators and appoint you as an independent senator. But you cannot be in there, and because of the fact that you were a good negotiator for the utilities and people like you, that on that basis you are a good senator. If that is the case, then go and be an independent senator. But if you want to be an independent senator, you're going to have to get the president to appoint you as an independent senator, not the leader of the opposition. The leader of the opposition has senators who are the creatures of the leader of the opposition. And if you are not a creature of the leader of the opposition, then you go somewhere else in the Senate. You either got to go over to the government or you got to go over to the president. So she had to go over to outside because they didn't see her resolving that question otherwise. So he dismissed her, as has been done before in instances by other people, notably the right excellent Errol Walton Barr, who dismissed 2 of his senators on a streetlight one night at a political meeting. So it is with precedent. But some people, I heard somebody in calling program said, okay, but Ralph Thorne is not Mr. Barr, and that is true. But I can tell you this, that Ralph Thorne, under the Constitution of Barbados, has the powers of Mr. Barr. He doesn't have the political presence of Mr. Barr. He's not a national hero. I don't think he will be a national hero either. Okay? He doesn't have the political skill of Mr. Barr. He doesn't have the political presence of Mr. Barr. But he has the constitutional power of Mr. Barr once he's leader of the opposition. And if he has that power, he has the power to appoint and to disappoint the senators. And that is what he did. He disappointed Ms. Watson. So my view is that that is the clear position. And I am satisfied that he did what he could do. And he did what he wanted to do. And as he said in the press conference this morning, he said it is done. So we have 2 new senators. And the second senator is now identified as Andre Worrell, the acting president of the Democratic Labour Party. Now, you could say that Mr. Thorne is trying to consolidate the existing leadership, probably preparing them for the ground in relation to the future, that he could stabilize the party with these people that he has put into acting positions, that is to say, the acting president and the acting general secretary. So in the case of the acting president, that's the highest post in the administration. Not the highest post in the party, but the highest post in the administration. This is something that Ronnie Garwood was trying to dispute. And he makes him now, rewards him because he is his creature. He puts him in the Senate. He didn't put Dr. Yarwood. He couldn't put Dr. Yarwood there. People argue why he should have put Dr. Yarwood. How are you going to put Dr. Yarwood when the very reason for reaching out to him by the rank and file grouping was to remove Dr. Yarwood? And Dr. Yarwood knew that too. And Mr. Blackett knew that too. They knew that it was an existential fight for either one side or the other. And that is why they seem to be so ridiculous in terms of the requirements of the party. One section of the party felt we had to do this to save the party from this leader who wanted to turn the party into a third party in his name and not the DLP that they knew. Now, you can go in, a lot of people know the difficulty in creating a third party. One of the clever ways in which you could create a third party is to go into another party that has infrastructure, political infrastructure, and create your party. The Ronnie Yarwood party, I heard somebody say that one that the way that Ralph Thorne is behaving, it sounds like if the DLP is now the Ralph Thorne party. But that's what you call projecting psychologically. In other words, that's exactly what they were doing in relation to Mr. Yarwood, Dr. Yarwood, and what they think then they should accuse Mr. Thorne of. But Mr. Thorne is not doing that on the basis of anything else other than that he's a member of the Democratic Labour Party, and he is the only member of the Democratic Labour Party with a parliamentary seat in the lower house. So he gives Mr. Worrell the position in the Senate. That is open to debate again to at another level. Was he the best choice for the DLP at this time? No, I already said why Mr. Thorne might have felt that he was the best choice. I said in another commentary in another place that perhaps he should have tried to relaunch Verla de Pisa. Now, Verla de Pisa, still in terms of the number of votes that she got as president, outvotes the number of votes that Dr. Yarwood had got as president of the Democratic Labour Party. But she made a miscalculation in her narrative in relation to the election of what it was, 2022. She asserted that she was going to win that election. I don't know if she could win an election after a 5-year period where you get a 30-love defeat. She should have said she should have continued within the narrative of rebuilding the DLP and hoping that they will do the best in that election that was possible. So when she projects herself so much as that she will win, then when she loses, she then has to say, is it my responsibility now, my obligation to resign? And she resigns, which is, I think, a bad decision on her part. Now, my view is that Verla could have been a choice, and then nobody would be able to quarrel about whether a woman has been removed and so on. You would be able to say that you have put a woman in. You have put a leader, so you've been digging into the party and digging across in the party in terms of support. It would have been a good choice, but we understand the logic behind the choice of Mr. Worrell. That question of the leadership is not settled until after the next general election, not settled ultimately. Mr. Thorne has to hold on and do his best right up to that election. But the moment that the election is called, there are questions that are going to arise. Can he win a seat? There are questions that are going to arise. Who will win the seats? Out of the people that win the seats, who then would be the best person to be the political leader of the Democratic Labour Party? So these things are going to come back up. So the conference did not settle those issues because Mr. Thorne's Palace School succeeded. I think Mr. Thorne's Palace School is the rank and file's Palace School that succeeded. So that is where it is at. Now, people are arguing that the protest that took place on the Saturday, that this protest was a democratic right and that people should not have been punished the next day on the basis of that protest. Now, that protest was both the one that everybody saw on television, with people quarreling and so on, and then it is said that there was an occupation the night. So this is two levels of protest where people were trying to inhibit the possibility of controlling the property and the space of the Democratic Labour Party after hours. And this became a security problem. So this would be in the minds of the people who are now in charge of the party. And that would have gone over to the Sunday. This is the case that I am making for them in terms of saying this protest was something that could be challenging, not only on the Saturday, but it could be challenging on the Sunday. Your protest, your democratic right to protest also, does not extend to the taking away of the rights of the other person that you're protesting against. And some people are getting on as if a protest means that your protest can be carried to any boundaries. No. Your right of protest goes to the point at which the other person says, you are now infringing my right. And that's where we have to make a decision. And that is all the protest was then. the protest was carried out, and then the people that the protest was against stopped the protest. They went to very strong measures on the Sunday by locking the other people out, even though they were members of the party. Two of them were expelled members of the party now, and that could be challenged too, as we said. But the protests, the people have the right to defend their right to have a meeting. So they were defending their right to hold the annual conference of the Democratic Labour Party, just as you were protesting against determinations that had been made prior to the annual conference of the party. So the occupation and the protests led to the lockout. That is how one could see it. Even where the lockout involved senior members of the Democratic Labour Party, even where it impacted on the former leader, the former president, Dr. Yarwood, even where it impacted on the leadership of the Young Democrats, all of them were involved in a protest that could go so far, but could not then prevent the rank and file of the party. Let's say we can open that discussion as to how great was the rank and file. The rank and file under an established constitutional establishment of a leadership, though, alternative leadership led by Mr. Thorne now, and by acting President Mr. Worrell and acting General Secretary Pedro Shepherd. That leadership had the right then to, as we said before, to defend itself.
Well, Dr. Belle has walked us through the complexities and nuances of recent political developments within the DLP and their broader implications for Barbados. Dr. Belle's insights remind us that political landscapes are ever evolving and the actions of today will shape the future of our nation. Thank you, Dr. Belle, for sharing your perspectives and deep understanding of these issues. Well, stay engaged, stay informed, and remember that the strength of our democracy lies in the active participation of every one of us. I'm Rashid Best. Until next time, take care and keep the conversation going.